Taoiseach, for the last year your government has been telling everyone that you've turned the corner on housing. Even as so many people across our society struggle to find an affordable home, you dress up failure as progress. But today we now know the truth. The Housing Commission, established by your government, has called you out today. Their leaked report, which wouldn't have seen the light of day if RT hadn't broken the story, is a damning indictment of your housing policy. It talks about systemic failure, ineffective decision-making, reactive policy-making, failure to deliver value for money, with one of the highest public expenditures for housing in Europe, yet one of the poorest outcomes. I suppose this should be no surprise when you pay billions to lease homes that go back to the wealthy property fund after 25 years. Taoiseach, the Housing Commission is telling you directly that your housing plan isn't working, and they state that only a radical strategic reset in housing policy will fix the problem. What does that mean? Well, it means that we must see a turn away from the disastrous housing policies of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. It means an urgent ramping up in the delivery of affordable homes to buy and rent. Taoiseach, your government can't even get your targets right. You failed to take account of more than a decade of unmet housing demand. And now we have a deficit which means that families with their own kids live in the box rooms of their parents' homes. It means people living in the family home well into their 30s. To respond to these challenges, the Commission calls for social and affordable housing delivery to increase to 20% of total housing stock. That's half of all new homes need to be affordable and social. The report makes it clear that government failure is undermining affordability in the housing system. Those are their words. Housing affordability has been shredded. On your watch, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, home ownership has collapsed for a generation, and first-time buyers now face an average price of €400,000 to buy a new home. That's simply not affordable for the majority of people. It's no better for those looking to rent. Yesterday's daft.ie report shows rip-off rents continuing to soar. New rent now averaging at €1,836 per month and a staggering €2,353 here in Dublin. Tá sé salero thuriscáil an Comisiún Taoiseachta gur hep an phlean Taoiseachta an Oireachtas. Ní mór inis ach athocrú ulmhór I policy Taoiseachta. Taoiseach, Fine Gael has been in government for 13 years, joined at the hip by Fianna Fáil for the last 8. And today, your Housing Commission tells you that your housing policies have failed. It also makes clear that there are solutions, that housing can be fixed, but only with a radical strategic reset in policy. And that means delivering housing that people can actually afford. It means taking on the vulture funds, the big landlords and the vested interests that are making the housing crisis worse. It means delivering the biggest affordable and social housing programme in the history of the state so that young teachers, nurses, Gardaí, retail workers can afford a home. This is the urgent change that we need in housing. So, Taoiseach, can I ask you, do you accept the view of your Housing Commission that your housing plan isn't working? And do you accept that only a radical strategic reset of housing policy has any prospect of working?
Much, Ceann Comhairle, and I'm very pleased that we have an opportunity today to discuss one of the largest and biggest social issues we face in this country, which is the housing challenge, and making sure that everyone in Ireland can have a roof over their head, and making sure that the young generation can aspire to own their own home, and making sure that parents can see their children, their adult children, move out of the box room in their homes and into a home with the security and certainty that that brings for them and their future. I think it's important to say, Ceann Comhairle, any fair analysis of the situation would show progress when it comes to housing supply. You see it in every town, you see it in every village, you see it in every county. Housing supply is increasing. We have seen 337 new homes every working day in Ireland commence construction. Incredible figures. In fact, this year so far, we have seen over 30,000 new homes commence construction. And I'm conscious that when it comes to a housing debate, we can get lost in figures and statistics. But of course, behind each of these new homes is the opportunity for hope and for security for a couple, for a family, and indeed for their future. In fact, in Ireland now, around 500 couples every single week are drawing down their mortgage. But it is absolutely true to say that every single day government is restless to do more. Government wants to do more, and government wants to hear new ideas. Government wants to hear how we can continue to make progress. That's why we set up a housing commission. Because we wanted to bring together 12 people from very different perspectives, from very different backgrounds, to ask them to come forward with ideas. And remember what the Housing Commission was about. The Housing Commission was about enabling us to plan out to 2050 in Ireland. So we move beyond this boom and bust where some years lots of homes are built, some years none are built, to a situation where for once and for all we have a sustainable long-term approach to housing. We asked them to do a body of work, and they've done it. And they've now submitted a report that's over 400 pages long, that has 83 recommendations, that has more than 500 actions and sub-actions. And you know what would be a terribly good thing to do when somebody does 3 years' worth of work? Would be to read the report before you decide what the report says, and then take action. It's a good idea too, Deputy Collins. So you know what the government will do this week? The government will publish the report. And you know what the opposition might do? Read the report too. Then we might come in here and debate the report and see how we can actually make more progress. This government is making progress when it comes to housing supply. This government is making progress when it comes to home ownership. This government is putting in place plans, schemes, incentives that are helping hundreds of couples every single week buy their first home. And all of you in your constituencies see new homes being built. But the government also knows that it's not just about the here and now. We have to look at where we get to 2050. And long before any reports in any media today, as you well know, Deputy, it was always the government's intention to review the housing targets. Because the next half of this decade isn't about plodding along. It is about a step change. It is about raising the bar in terms of the amount of supply that we can deliver every single year. And we were always reviewing the housing targets in light of the census. The review is advanced, and the intention, as you know, informed by independent peer-reviewed research by the ESRI, is to publish revised targets for the years ahead later this year, and then to work with people right across this House to make progress, because that's what we need to do. So let's actually read the report. Let's read the over 400 pages. Let's look at the 83 recommendations. Let's look at the 500 actions, and let's then make a decision. But we're standing here today in a vastly different place when it comes to housing supply than we were only months ago, and a very, very different world when it comes to housing supply than we were years ago when you referenced my party first came to government.
Deputy McDonald.
So you are now 13 years in government, as I say, and any fair analysis, the facts reflect record house prices, record rents, record homelessness. I don't know what world you live in, Taoiseach, but the reality that I meet in communities across the state is a reality of crisis and stress, and in many cases misery. I don't think I'm overstating to say that. When you live in overcrowded accommodation, where you're on a housing list with no real prospect of getting housed, when you know that no matter really what you do, you're not going to have a deposit for a house that you can actually afford. That's the reality. And your Housing Commission is naming your failure. And they say that what we require is a radical reset. Now, the individuals on this commission, by the way, have been critiquing government policy for a long time. None of the ideas are new ideas. Lots of us have been telling you for the longest time that your housing policy has failed. So I want to ask you again just straight, because you established this commission and they have now landed on their verdict, and the verdict is a big fail for government policy and a call for a radical reset in housing policy. And I want to know, are you as Taoiseach prepared to countenance that radical reset that we need to solve what is now a social crisis?
Taoiseach. We shouldn't misrepresent what the Housing Commission was asked to do. The Housing Commission was asked to come up with recommendations as how to move forward in relation to housing. That's what we asked them to do. We asked them to come up with recommendations. They've done the work, we thank them for their work, and now we consider the recommendations. And the first thing we should all do is publish the report. And that will happen this week. That will happen this week. We'll publish the report. And then the government will respond to the recommendations. But I just find it very peculiar when a government asks people to come together and give ideas into the future, how it's actually then misrepresented as something that it's not. This is about what do we do next? What are the next steps? Now that we have a functioning housing market, now that we have a growing workforce, now that we have increasing supply. And when it comes to being radical, we've already taken many radical steps. Interventions in the housing market that were never considered before. Largest social housing supply last year in 50 years. First-time buyers grants that you'd scrap. The establishment of the land development agencies. A rent tax credit. Cost rental. Reform of the planning laws. You know what's really radical when it comes to housing policy is that you come in here every day and outline the housing challenge, and you've yet to publish a full plan, and all you do for first-time buyers is abolish the supports we've put in place.
Thank you very much. Taoiseach